quite as meaningful as it might seem to be. So just because we have a predominance of markets in October is not quite as meaningful as in fact, it's nowhere near as meaningful as the preponderance of the space goat farts with the crashcade in November. Because the data being brought in by markets in October is so frothy that we can't get any real clear determination as to what's going on. But that itself may be meaningful to those people that are in the markets. Okay. So let's look at October. In October, we have a slight preponderance of about 6 to 7% of markets. In November crashcade, we have a combined preponderance of the entities Terra and Space Goat Fart, discounted by weight, of about 14 to 15%. And then back in the December period of time, we have a huge mishmash of political, financial, and religious that are each adding about a total of, say, 2 to 3 to 4% of the weight, but no more than 4%.
Okay, that's confusing. I mean, it's details, but it's not making sense at this end of the timeline.
Correct. That's why I say it's not necessarily meaningful.
Yeah. So do you have any temporal markers that you're personally looking for, that we should be looking for as a possible sign that everything's about to go kaplooey?
Some of them are showing up now. The shift of a lot of things in India, and certain movements in Russia, as well as the riots in China. One of the things that had been a big indicator for us would be the escalation of riots within China this year, and we've seen as much social disorder and as much effort put by the powers that be in China to suppress social unrest in the first 4 months of this year as we saw in all of last year. And so now we're actually have seen as much so far this year as in the last 3 years. And in 2010, there were 70,000 riots. In 2009, these are officially noted riots or incidents. And in 2009, there were 86,000. So this year, we've seen over 150,000 social disruption incidents, which is all an outgrowth of how the corruption, if you will, of the fiat currency is working its way through their social system. So that temporal marker has been a very big one. And then I have some personal contact with some highly placed Chinese individuals, including one fellow who is clearly a billionaire, and he is exiting China. That's another large temporal marker. So the global rev and all of that, well underway, it's progressing. It's merely a question of how soon it gets to you. The call we had made in the last SHAPE report for the launch in Britain, it was precisely on. It was within our time frame. So in that level of the whole discussion, I don't see any reason to change our projection that we'll see riots soon, probably before or around the equinox in Italy. They'll be related to the food riots that will take down the Vatican, and that may be as early as October. And from then on, that's my next large major temporal marker has to, well, there's a bunch of them, but they have to do with the activity coming out of the Vatican.
Wow, we live in interesting times.
Oh, amazing, amazing. You couldn't have asked for better, you know? Too bad we couldn't have scripted or written it down.
I'm not bored, yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Cliff, speaking about the global rev, when will the riots hit the US, and will they be as eventful as the UK riots?
The very disturbing part of it all now is the shift in the U.S. is mirroring what has happened in the U.K. relative to how law enforcement is reacting. So I think that it will be much worse here. We're much more heavily armed. We won't be rioting with baseball bats. There will be a lot of bullets flying around. The question will be whether or not the officialdom and minions can push out the power of the U.S. military onto U.S. citizens. They're doing everything they can now in the language to demonize the citizenry, to both the law enforcement, the militarized ones, the SWAT teams, everybody that's been trained by the FBI in the last 20 years, as well as the military themselves. You'll note that they no longer refer to people as citizens of the United States. The military is now handing out, the U.S. military is now handing out and preparing to hand out, distribute fairly widely, I guess, descriptor cards that basically lay out who you are in our social order. And that's a prelude to the imposition of military control of the civilian populace, because they now view us as terrorists. So we see trends in these last 4 years here in the U.S. that mirror what happened in the U.K. The U.K. was early. David Icke was out there railing about it years ago because he could see it occurring all around him. And basically what it was the militarization of the police to the point where the police saw the citizenry as the perpetrators and therefore had a natural reluctance to come out on crimes, because they saw everybody involved with crime as a participant, including so to speak, the victims. And so now we see the fascist rise of that same attitude here in the U.S. and the natural consequences where, you don't wear your seatbelt, so they taser you and kick your ribs in because you're a perpetrator of an evil crime. And it just goes on and on and on. Now this has shifted, we know, from the historical reference in the U.S. to those individuals that used to wear badges as peace officers who had the discretion to just keep the peace. That was what they were there for, all the way up through now law enforcement. And real soon, I'm not going to state my guesses as to how they're going to relabel it, but real soon, probably by November 1, you'll see us start relabeling in the U.S. those people that we now call the law enforcement community. And it won't be a good thing. So, yes, they're going to try and do that. Will it work? I just don't know.
Clif, this is Lenny. When you were talking, I was wondering if you were talking about the descriptor cards, if that's like a single unique identifier, like a chip or a biometric.
No. These are more like what they would hand out to troops in an occupying country that would identify people by tribal garb, so to speak, and let them know what tribe they're in and how much hassle and whether they're a friendly, unknown, or disfriendly.
So is that kind of like racial profiling in a way?
But it's going to be social, because I think you'll see that they'll probably try and include archetypes like homeless people and welfare people and so on at that level of social categorization, such that the individuals that are tasked with maintaining order. Now I'm stressing those words for a real reason. But for maintaining order on behalf of the powers that be, will know who they can do what to with what level of impunity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to wear a white gown.
Well, okay, there you go. This is an interesting subject, as a matter of fact. Those little bits of data, and I've got to say that, I'm as frail and weak as an individual as anybody else, right? So I fire up model space, and we've got the spiders dumping stuff in, and you get some flashy bits there, and you can't help it. The coffee's giving you up. You don't have any pie at the moment, so you're going to go mess about with the model space and just see what that little flashy bit was, because it was an intriguing hue or color. And I've done a little bit of that prior to getting into the interpretation with a serious bit of work here probably in the next week. But in any event, one of the things I did see was that there's a developing trend. Well, two things, actually. This huge archetypical shift that's occurring, which we can talk about later, but this really interesting trend relative to dress and face. And before we'd had the information about the bad makeup and how that was going to cause problems, and that's still building and pending, so it's real close, I think. But also now we've got an interesting thing, which I'm going to call changeable facial tattoos. And apparently there's going to be a backlash or outgrowth against facial recognition software, as we're seeing being used in the London riots. And so people will start purchasing pre-manufactured, probably underground to start with, and then someone will really catch on. But they're pre-manufactured like iron-on or apply face paint that will be specifically designed to thwart facial recognition software. And some of it will include, splashy glitters and other things to distort camera images. So we can look forward to this in our long slew of people wearing masks, memes that are coming out. Now, we know that this is a wide meme, and it is continuing to grow. So going to be real interesting.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Won't be white. You'll probably go down to the local 7-Eleven and buy some under-the-counter facial recognition software thwarting tattoos.
Yeah.
Cliff, can I ask a follow-on to that? Do you see anything in your data that would indicate an electronic masking of any sort?
Sure, but I'm not going to discuss it.
Okay. All right.
Hi, Cliff. I've got a question here from Bixweir, who's a follower of your work as well.
Sure, yeah,
Hi,
I know.
Cliff.
Yeah.
Yep. Hi, Cliff. My work has long forecast the total destruction of all electronic and paper assets, as well as debt, around the world with the implosion of the global derivative complex. I see two paths the people of the United States can take when this crash culminates. The first hands over all our freedoms to the powers that be, with the majority of us turning into debt slaves under another unbacked fiat monetary system. The second returns us to our constitutional gold and silver monetary system, and we are able to start fresh under new leadership. What kind of monetary system does the Webbot see in a post-crash America, or will there be so many other problems and issues that it becomes less relevant? Thanks, Bix.
It's less relevant, but we actually see both. They're not mutually exclusive. One must precede the other, and we have to go through the attempted imposition of slavery in order to turn the with the time and flow with the go, if you will. We're at a particular unique point of history. We're seeing the destruction of a civilization that has been the culmination of the last 13,000 years, that is based on a bunch of abstractions and illusions, or abstractions that are illusions, and also based on a bunch of assumptions that are illusions, all of which are going to be totally taken away from us as mind props, if you will. So we must, as a necessity, go through all of these events. That's why I'm trying to basically just sort of chill out and let it all happen and stand back from it, because everybody's going to have to get really whipped up in order to understand that it was all meaningless, and we can go on and get on with the real work of turning us into a Class 1 civilization. But unfortunately, there's this little period of time where we have to be upset of things. So, yeah, it will be the imposition of the slavery, though. That's what they're trying right now. The question is, well, will it work? I don't know. I don't think so, because we have some hints that it doesn't, but we'll live through to see it, I guess.
Interesting, Cliff. And to all the dogs barking, it sounds like a full moon out there today. She's a kind
These are our security services. They're just a little overzealous.
That's very true. It's not just yours, by the way, Cliff. It's a number of our guests here. They're very much dog lovers. The next question is from Diane VG.
Hi, Cliff. Okay, we're moving on to global pop. And my question is in regards to those of us who dare to live recklessly by staying, say, in Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, the West Coast. Do you see anything terror-specific to the U.S. or the Pacific Plate cracking indicating that we should take off and get out of Dodge? And if so, do you have a time frame? The reason I'm asking this, hang on, so you understand, the reason I'm asking is because some of us don't have the financial means to quit our jobs and head to higher altitudes or build a boat even. Living beyond paycheck to paycheck is a real bitch and pushes one to learn how to rely on the universe to provide when one can no longer financially provide for themselves.
I fully understand, and that's why I'm very, very, very hesitant to answer this, because people might take it wrong and do that and place themselves at even greater financial risk and personal risk when not necessary. We always have to acknowledge that everybody's destiny is their own. And I have personally seen this, okay? I've lived through things that should have killed me. And others have been greatly injured around me, and I've come through unscathed, and there's no rhyme nor reason for that. So the universe participates at a level that we cannot second guess. That having been said, yes, we've got earthquakes that we've got coming up. We've got some degrading environment, and we have these nasty bastards out there that have